Welcome, everyone. Good evening. This podcast, again, is called Unveiling. Thanks for tuning in. My name is Jordan Bain, and my guest tonight is Kat Moore. She's someone who I've known now for about 5 or 6 years. She's a lovely person and a modern mystery school healer and ritual master as well. I myself am a senior guide, international school, and the purpose of what we're going to be talking about tonight is to really dig in with there's something that really plagues all of us at some time or another, or I think it does. I don't know. It's called self-doubt. And self-doubt and doubt in general, but especially self-doubt is really poisonous to pretty much anything that we really want to get done. Our relationships, our work, all that stuff. So this topic, kind of have touched on this topic in other ways in other podcasts, but I really want to do this podcast tonight to drill down into what self-doubt is. Our own struggles with self-doubt, mine, Kat's, other people's, and how that can be shifted and changed through doing the work that we do in the Modern Mystery School. So Kat is, she came to the school many years ago in search of a cure for night terrors that she had been dealing with for about 20 years or more. And initially she was just searching for a good night's sleep, but she soon realized positive effects that energy work was having on other areas of her life too. And she decided to study with the school so she could share the sessions she had received with other people as well. So welcome on the show, Kat. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for the invite.
Yeah, my pleasure. So, when we started talking about the show a couple of weeks ago and I invited you on, you were like, me? Like, I still struggle with self-doubt. Are you sure that you actually want to have me on the show? And I was like, you are an expert, because we, as human beings, we come here, for sure. We come here to learn lessons. And, if you've struggled with something a lot and you've really done your work and you've progressed, you've done a bunch of initiations now in the school, you've done Kabbalah several times, like you've been doing this work in a pretty dedicated way for at least a few years now. And we get to this point in our path of progression where in the mystery school, where we've done enough healing that we really start to be able to hold that torch for other people. And then whatever our personal story is, this is one of the beautiful things about this podcast is seeing people's, like the development of their personal story. So if you struggle with a lot of self-doubt in your personal history, then you can help other people with it. So, I would say you're the perfect person, even though you might think, hey, I'm still really kind of struggling with self-doubt, to talk about how to help others get out of self-doubt. So I'm excited to hear, because I don't know if I know all these stories. And you can ask me some questions. We decided, before the show, this is like kind of a back and forth podcast. We interview each other kind of thing. So I love these discussions and I love learning about your history and the history of different initiates, even people who I've worked with, like yourself for many years. So how is it that self-doubt has been a thing for you in your life? Maybe just give us an overview of that. Like when would you say self-doubt started for you? Like when did you start to notice like this as a thing that you were, that was part of your identity or part of your experience in life?
So I think I would say like I don't know when it ever really wasn't a thing. And like when I think of self-doubt, I think of it as being you're doubting obviously your decisions, your choices, your actions, like everything from the smallest thing to the biggest thing. And I remember when I was a kid being in the store in tears for half an hour, just not being able to choose like which outfit I wanted for my Barbie doll. Right? So it's like I could never make up my mind about stuff. I could never like trust a decision that I was going to make. And that was very pervasive, like all through younger years, teenage years, in my 20s, even in my 30s. When I got the job I have now, I was like, oh, they made a mistake. Like I can't possibly be qualified for this. They just hired me because they didn't have anyone else or something like this. So, my mind has always run this narrative of doubting and questioning and not really knowing myself enough to be like, yes, this is the answer. This is my choice. And I'm good with that.
Interesting. How did that show up like in school and in academics and stuff like that?
I think I always felt like I was doing the papers wrong. Here I am answering a question and just feeling like someone else has probably got a different take on this, and I bet their take is right. I don't understand this question. Like, clearly I don't know. Or no, actually also going into my seminars, being like, well, I think I have the right answer, but I'm not going to say it. because I probably don't, and I don't want to like look foolish in front of everybody. So I'll just keep quiet. I won't say anything about that. And then when someone says the right answer and it was my answer, I'm like, oh, every time. Should have said it.
Like seminar style discussion classes in college.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Here in the United States, we don't always have that except in liberal arts schools. So it's a dying breed of class. But yeah, when you go in and you want to really share something to represent what you know, and then you think, I don't know, that can be really, damaging to our sense of accomplishment and a lot of other things as well. So how has this played out in relationships for you? Like if you can sort of paint a picture of like different areas of your life and how you've seen self-doubt be pervasive.
In relationships, I think, more in my like teens and 20s, just not really knowing if I'm making the right choice, if I'm really with the right person. I've always been kind of like a long-term person, but then I'm like, I don't know, like I can't tell. Is this really who I want to be with? Is this really the right choice for me? And I suppose if you don't even know yourself, then how can anyone else ever know you, right? Mm-hmm. So it was almost like maybe not letting other people in is probably the best way that I would have to explain that, and tricky. I feel like it's always shifting sands if you're doubting. Someone can never really know you because you never really know yourself, and things are always changing from day to day, because I feel like when you doubt yourself, you're always looking for the external factors to validate, right? And those can be shifting right and center. You're not like grounded in yourself. You're not really sure about what you want, and that will change if someone says something, not so cool about someone, or it's just it's always moving. It's always shifting. It's kind of unstable.
Yeah. I think pretty much anyone watching can relate to this, because I think everyone goes through self-doubt in some capacity. I'm like, but what you're talking about maybe is more on the higher end of the self-doubt spectrum than many. Like, at least in my own experience and in people I've worked with and talked to, like, you're sharing stuff about like, I couldn't make up my mind. I always thought someone else had a better answer. That kind of ongoing self-doubt, like in every area, am I with the right person? And these sorts of things, when they play out over time, it's like, how did you decide that this was not okay? Or did you decide that? Maybe you came to the mystery want to heal night terrors and get a better night's sleep. Maybe there was no intention to heal self-doubt. Tell me about that.
There was no intention to heal self-doubt. Okay. I wanted to sleep peacefully, and I had tried everything else under the sun, right? That had been recommended, or I had researched, or had been suggested one way or another. And then, my now fiance Nick, who you knew at the time, suggested, why don't you chat with Jordan? And to be honest, it was kind of like a last-ditch attempt just so that I could sleep peacefully at night. I was like desperate enough to hope that it would work, but I wasn't really sure that it would work. So I decided to give it a go, and then when I felt it, of course, then I'm like, oh gosh, now I have to like reevaluate all kinds of stuff. And then feeling it, right? Feeling the effects of that life activation. And then going to the Empower Thyself weekend, feeling the benefits of that, which were massive in my life. That I would say was a big turning point in terms of like self-doubt and confidence building and stuff like that. That's when I was like, okay, so there's more to this, right? There's more benefits than just going and getting a good night's sleep. Like, I feel sometimes, I explain it to people, I feel like Dr. Strange, right? He just wanted to fix his hands. He didn't care about anything else, right? That was me with my sleep. Turns out there's this whole other world of like awesome stuff. It wasn't what I was looking for, but it's what I found. So yeah, no intentions.
Now you save the world from interdimensional evil, but you just wanted a better night's sleep.
There we go.
Exactly. Very cool. So, but in terms of I mean, we could do a podcast about getting a better night's sleep, and that might have all sorts of viewers as well. Tell me other stories of self-doubt. Like what does that mean to you when you look at your life now, and how, like ways that you've looked to other people, or ways that you've looked to society? Like where have you turned due to self-doubt? Like where have you turned, and what has that done in your life? Does that question make sense?
Yeah. So, well, where have I turned? I suppose, just to what other people were doing, really. Like follow the masses, because you're always safe in the masses, right? I used to drink a lot. Actually, the most crippling self-doubt of my life is when I'm hungover, or when I was hungover. I don't drink anymore, right?
Yeah.
But
was drinking like an escape from this sort of mental conditioning? Maybe
for a while. I mean, I think it's also just part of going to university in the UK, right? It's a very like alcohol.
Not just culture. The UK.
No, for better or for worse, it just is what it is. And so so that's just kind of like the way it is, and you go out and you're partying and everything like that. And I would wake up the next day and I'd be like, oh my God, did I say that? Did I say that? Did I offend that person? Did I really do that? And it would be like the most trivial things, the most minor things, like an innocuous comment that I had made, and I would be destroyed by it all day long. Right? I would just be feeling so bad. I'd be like, oh, I can't believe that I would have said something like that, even though really it was never anything, right? It was nothing.
And you were drunk. I think a lot of people said a lot of things to me, or I probably said a lot of things to people in college when one or both were drunk, and I don't even know what they were. So,
right. So you know how it goes.
Yeah.
And like most probably those people don't even remember.
But the self-doubt, I didn't stop and think about like, oh, did I say that thing to my friend, and did he get pissed off last night? Like that wasn't my flavor,
That didn't come out. Well, that's good, because it's refreshing. And that was like every weekend for me.
Interesting.
And I was so sick and tired of it, but I guess it never really occurred to me to stop drinking either. So.
Right.
So I don't know. Till I came to you that one day and you're like, hey, maybe stop drinking. I'm like, oh, yeah.
Of all the things to doubt, like not doubting the alcohol. It's interesting.
Yeah, well, because everybody does it, right?
Right.
So there's so like normal. A safety in that. And to be the one that steps away and goes, I'm not going to drink anymore. That raises some eyebrows, right? Like, oh, really? And so now having that confidence to be like, yeah, I don't drink, it doesn't work for me. XYZ reasons, right?
Especially not stepping out of the crowd. If part of the self-doubt is like never be noticed. I don't want anyone to see me as different, then that's a big deal. And this is something that, I know you've shared with me that you struggle with in terms of like the mystery school work is how do I represent something to people that's so different if I feel this way inside? Like, if I've spent a lot of time in life trying to fit in and not stand out, then how do I go be a weirdo publicly?
Right. Yeah. Well, this is
come on a podcast and talk about it.
Like stepping right out there. But yeah, no, that's been huge, right? Is like how do I talk about this work? Right? Because it's pretty niche, I would say. It's, it's still not a mainstream thing. I really do believe it's going to get there, but it's not yet. And just being able to talk about that, and I didn't tell anybody that I was doing any of this stuff for like the longest time. And I just kind of like hid, people knew that Nick did it. So I'd be like, oh yeah, Nick does this stuff. And then one time one of my friends was like, that's really cool. Tell me more about it. And like that one friend, I always tell her every time I see her, I'm like, Z, thank you so much, because she is the one person who is kind of like super, super, super accepting and interested and curious in it. And like, I think just having one person be like, wow, tell me more about that. That's actually really cool. It kind of like gave me the courage to be like, okay, I can talk about this. Like I can be this new way, and it's not going to work for everybody, right? It's not everybody's jam. But just having that, I think, really helped me sort of like move into it and try to start exploring and discussing. And definitely, I've messed it up a few times. I don't really know how to talk about this a lot, but I feel like it gets better because I feel like gradually over time, become a little more confident talking about it. I mean, I don't know, you've been meditating like forever, right? So maybe you didn't have this, or did you? Like this sort of stepping out of the spiritual closet, as it were.
Yeah, I didn't have that, but for me, self-doubt was like such a big thing in my life growing up. It was, maybe that's why I wanted to talk about it tonight. It's like when I was a kid, my life was self-doubt. I mean, I walked into kindergarten when I was 5, and I spent the first 6 months of the year, or the first like half of the year, like hiding in like one of those cardboard bricks that you used to have in the 1980s. I don't know if you remember those, but like, I don't even know. Maybe kids still have them. I have no idea. I haven't seen them in like friends who have kids' houses in a long time. But there were these like cardboard bricks that they had that you could like build forts with. And so I built a fort for myself, and I like lived in it inside the classroom. And it was kindergarten, awesome. So I was like allowed to do that. But I basically didn't talk to anyone for the first 5 months, and I wasn't trying to be a jerk or antisocial. I was literally just scared to experience what would it even be like to connect with these other kids. Like what was a social interaction? I was very smart, very talkative, around my parents, but being around lots of other kids, I was very afraid of judgment, very afraid of like, how would I appear? What are people thinking about me? How do I seem to them? And I was afraid of their energy or their emotions. And these are just all 5 and 6 year olds, so that was terrifying. Spending that first year in kindergarten, especially the first half of the year. And then it sort of continued like that through most of elementary school. For the first 8 years I went to school, it was like, yeah, I wouldn't say I knew or didn't know myself particularly well, although I at that age, it's very hard to say what know thyself means when you're like, 6, 7, 8 years old. There's not even, according to mystery school teachings, the soul doesn't even really start connecting fully into the body until age 10. Like the soul comes in when you're born, but it's not really attached with like the emotions and the mind to the body in a really direct way until you're about 10 years old. Your individuality doesn't really start to come out. So it's hard to say, does a 10-year-old know themselves? Does a 9-year-old know themselves? But I just remember feeling very, very strongly through all of elementary school up until high school, which I started when I was 14. Like these people around me are not people I can really trust or relate to. And I have to really hold myself back. I have to really like keep myself insulated and away from people. And that sort of self-doubt was really crippling, in terms of like not forming too many. I had several good friends who I spent most of my time with, and I just didn't develop lots of friendships. Like I didn't have social circles. In high school, I finally started to grow up more. And then I'd say I started to overcome self-doubt throughout high school. But that's also when I started meditating. That's when I started doing yoga, like 14, 15, 16 years old was when I really started doing spiritual practices. And through a lot of that healing, then yes, I was able to hold more awareness of myself, more awareness of other people, just feel safe. And for me, a lot of it, I think, was just about emotional safety. What does it take for someone to be emotionally safe? And that's different for each person. But the better I knew myself and the more I explored things within me using, especially meditation as a tool, those things started to heal. And then by college, that was mostly, I would say self-doubt was mostly gone in lots of ways socially. But then the self-doubt of being a man in the world kicked in. How do I go out into the world and actually live a life? But oh my God, this is so scary. Like I'm so different than most people, and I don't see myself ever being happy sitting behind a desk. I tried like more blue collar type jobs, like construction and painting and like house painting and stuff like that, just like different trades. And those were fun, but I didn't like really, I just didn't feel like I fit in. But I didn't feel like I fit in like a corporate job either. So I was like, I'm a little bit screwed here because I don't fit in corporate America and the white collar jobs, and I don't fit in sort of the blue collar, you know, more down to earth type jobs. So where do I fit in? This is pretty scary for me because I know the expectation, you know, when you grow up and you go to college is that you're supposed to get a job and you're supposed to, you know, earn a living and do these things. And I was like, I'm headed for straight up, you know, $10 an hour retail because I don't really have a skill set that I can go out and market. And I knew that it was energy healing and this kind of work that I do now. But I was just like, the self-doubt was through the roof in terms of will I ever be able to earn a living doing this sort of work? And I was convinced that it wasn't. And that drove me to, you know, almost like suicidal level depression by the time I was a senior in college. I was just like, no, it's over. Like this is, I've been a kid, I've been a student, but I'll never actually be a man and do anything in the world. So the self-doubt in that sense was crippling for my whole life, but it took on different forms. And I was never like necessarily across the board in every area. So how about
you?
You
just tied together two things there that it's never occurred to me really that that's part of self-doubt. But like I was always very shy growing up, and like now that you say that, like it's doubting my ability to be able to go out and have a regular interaction and a regular conversation, or to think that anybody would be interested in anything that I have to say.
Yeah.
And then I've also tried all the jobs under the sun, you know, including construction and retail and, you know, office jobs and everything. And yeah, feeling like I do or don't fit in is definitely like a thing. And I never really put that together as being self-doubt, but like I never feel qualified to do the thing that it is. I mean, this job that I have right now, that was a big one, and that I was aware of, but like just never really feeling like I didn't fit in with construction. And I didn't particularly fit in with clothing retail stuff. And yeah, just that whole big like self-doubt and can I really do this? You know, what am I qualified for anyway? It's definitely a thing.
Yeah, I think again, a lot of people struggle with that, and you know, life coaches and that sort of industry, you know, often call it imposter syndrome. Although usually imposter syndrome is used in more of a specific like career path, professional context when you're trying to do a specific like higher level niche career job and you feel totally unqualified to do the thing, whatever the thing is that you're being asked to do, and that someone else must be able to do it better. And if anyone could sort of like emotionally, mentally, spiritually see you naked, like if they could see you for what you were and they could see what you were actually thinking, you'd be fired immediately because everybody knows and everyone's going to laugh at you and everyone, you know, this sense of like, almost like the fear of public speaking, like being on stage, being revealed, being unmasked. It's interesting. I'm just realizing, you know, this podcast is called Unveiling, being unveiled for who you really are. And then being like, oh crap, I'm just a fake.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't know any of this. I don't even belong here.
Totally. And that's how I felt. I was like, I'm just going to fake it for right now. I'm going to make it look like I know what I'm talking about. Right. just keep on going.
And this really is universal. This is something that, you know, everyone that I talk with who's trying to do anything about anything in their life goes through this. You know, I've worked with several thousand clients over like 15 years now, and people don't get over this easily. People don't just snap their fingers or get just like a life activation or do 1 or 2 healing sessions or meditate, you know, once a week for a few months and then they feel okay with themselves. Like it takes really serious work to break through and to, I mean, I was told by my spirit guides, which, you know, some people might say, you just said spirit guides on a podcast. That's weird. Whatever. You know, when I was 7 years before I started this podcast, you're going to be like on TV, you're going to be, you know, on YouTube, and you're going to have people watching you and you're going to talk about spirituality. And I was like, no way, I can't do that. Like, you know, I can see in the stream right now, there's anywhere between like 18 and 28 people watching us at any given time. That's like there's a feed thing that puts the YouTube and the Facebook live streams together and shows me how many people are watching live. And then I go back and I look, and maybe any given podcast is watched between Facebook and YouTube like 500 times or like 1,000 times. So even with only 500 or 1,000 people seeing, who knows, 5, 10, or 15 minutes of this, right? Because almost no one, I look at the stats, almost no one watches this all the way through. Maybe like 5% of people actually watch all 45 minutes of it. The average watch time is like 10 minutes, something like that. So people are tuning in for 10 minutes, seeing us yammer for 10 minutes, and then, you know, you guys aren't cool enough to listen to for all 45 minutes, or I have something better to do with my life. I totally get it. And then what value did I offer? Like, how can I offer some sort of value to people in their lives in doing this? And so for 7 years, like, I didn't do it. You know, what is that? Is that self-doubt? We could call it that, maybe.
I mean, maybe, but it's cool that it's cleared out.
Right time. Yeah, I mean, maybe it just wasn't the right time. But when is the right time? You know, I hear that a lot with people who have done like a lot of new age work and personal development. Oh, this isn't working out. Maybe it's not the right time.
But that kind of gives away all your power, right?
Right. And it's like, well, maybe it'll be the right time when you're ready. Then, then at least you're owning. That's a better step, because then you're saying, well, it's still on me. It didn't happen because I wasn't ready.
Right.
But if we go a step further, it's like, well, how do I get ready? You know, because if I just say I'm not ready, I could then not be ready for the next 7 years.
Yeah.
We're ready. I could be not ready for the rest of my life.
Right. That's a scary thought when you think about all the ways that self-doubt holds us back.
What are the things right now in my life that I'm not doing because I have self-doubt? What are the things in your life that you're not doing because you have self-doubt?
Right.
Yeah, that was a legit question, not just a rhetorical question.
Oh, that was a legit question?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot there. Like, you know, am I the right person for the job that I'm doing? I still come to that. Am I going to be a guide in the mystery school? Can I make it as a guide in the mystery school? Because still, sometimes I have a hard time talking, like I said, about the work that I do. And you need to be able to connect with people, I think, to be able to sort of help them see how it can be a benefit to them. So those are like a couple of big questions that I have, you know, and then, like, where to live? Do we stay in Somerville? Do we move? Like, I mean, there's all these questions that just come up, I suppose. Like, at the moment, they feel like pretty big ones, but you know, part of I suppose moving on, it's like understanding those and building the life then that I want to live. So I have to know when I'm ready, or I have to know when I want to make those changes, because I kind of feel like it's not just going to happen by itself. Like, my ideal life isn't just going to fall into my lap because I sit here and I'm like, hey, I want to make some changes, but I'm not going to do anything about it.
No, it really won't. I mean, you can use all sorts of cool magic and Kabbalah in the mystery school to make it more likely, but without action, it will never happen.
Right.
So, or only tiny pieces of it will happen. Like, into each life, some rain must fall. Like, some things will happen automatically for us, but most good things we really do have to work for. And self-doubt is that crippling thing that won't allow us to work for something, because we'll say, well, I'll do it tomorrow. It's so related to like putting it off, or putting it on somebody else or something else, or saying, I can't do it because this, that, or the other thing. It's very tempting with self-doubt to make lots of excuses.
Yeah. I think I worry that, you know, trying something, then I see whether I'm successful or I fail, right? And if I don't try, I don't find out if I fail. So it's almost like I'm safe. I don't know if you feel that way sometimes, like maybe with making this podcast, like, who knows, right? But for me, it's like, if I don't try doing something, then I don't fail at it.
Right. And sometimes we really just have to try a lot to make something succeed. We really have to try, and we try again. We fail a lot of times, and then we see, this is what I need to do to make that work. That was definitely me running healing practice. I didn't know what I needed to succeed the first 5 years. From 2004 to 2009, I was kind of like just swimming around in the dark with how much can I even help people, because I don't even really know myself enough. I haven't healed enough in myself to actually be able to show up for other people. And that took 5 years just to get enough footing under me to show up for other people. And then it was several more years before I felt solid enough being able to really guide someone on their spiritual path and say like, yeah, I've actually, I've been there, or if I haven't been there, I have the teachings and the wisdom to share to help you with wherever you're at on your path. So I had a lot of self-doubt even starting a healing practice. I was 24 years old. I'm like, what does a 24-year-old have to help people with in terms of their progression in life? What do I even know at 24? But I was like, I won't learn it if I don't start. So that awareness was stronger somehow for me at the time of like, it doesn't matter if I'm 24, I'll serve the people I'm ready to serve. And then when I'm older and wiser, I will serve clients who are also older and wiser and who need more help. Just got to serve the right people at the right time. So let's talk about what the tools are though, because I think that's maybe the most interesting part for me is like, how do these tools help? Like, what are the things that you've done specifically, Kat, that have helped you in the mystery school? What have you turned to in terms of healings or tools or meditations that have helped you get over self-doubt?
I think the first one, which I mentioned earlier, was the Empower Thyself weekend, right? Because what I noticed after that is, like, I can be a very sensitive person. I'm Pisces. I'm very affected by what other people say. But I felt like after that weekend, I wasn't. It was more like water off a duck's back. I'm like, okay, you feel that way, but like it doesn't really bother me. So that was huge. And obviously that's, pretty much like a starting point in the school. Becoming a ritual master definitely was like grounding. And I never even felt like I was a head in the clouds kind of person, but like I did ritual master, I was just like, oh, grounded. Like this is what that feels like. And, it took a while, obviously, for a lot of that to integrate. But last year I did 12-week meditation program. And I think really just sitting with myself in silence for so many hours over such an extended period of time gave me a sense that I could actually like trust in the meditations that I was doing. Because I was always like, I'm doing this meditation, but like, I bet it's just, my inner voice, like chit-chatting away. It's not anything real. And doing that 12-week program, I got some really, really surprising information that I could almost like check, I could validate. I actually went and did go validate a couple of things and I couldn't believe it. It was like, so surprised. And then once I did that, it was like, okay, now I feel like I can start actually genuinely trusting what I am getting from my meditations. I know it's not just random chit chat because these things just happened and I looked them up and that's actually like a real thing. So ritual master probably is the biggest thing, because that was part of it. But then as an earlier starting point, that Empower Thyself for sure, just to give me the confidence boost, that I could do stuff like this and that it was genuine and that there's more to life than being like a super anxious person who's affected by what everybody thinks and who, has emotional crises every time she's hungover.
Yeah. How do you deal with self-doubt now when things come up? Because I assume like, we're not necessarily like over these issues quickly. So at least in my experience for myself and most people who I work with. So when self-doubt comes up now, like, what do you do?
So I guess it varies depending on what's going on, right? So like today you're like, hey, do you want to do a podcast? I'm like, ooh, talking about self-doubt. Like that's a thing I'm still struggling with, but I'm like, growth doesn't happen when you're comfortable in your little box, right? So I'm like, you know what, I'm going to do it. I'm going to get out of there and I'm just going to see what happens, basically. Rituals are another huge one. I find like the days that I don't do my rituals in the morning, and I do them just in the evening, things like seep in, right, during the day, and they make me question what's going on, maybe with my work, maybe with interactions with other people. And so I've learned more now, like the value, it's not so much overcoming self-doubt as like preventing the self-doubt from even coming in the first place. Doing my ritual, I mean, of course it's still going to happen, but like doing my rituals in the morning and being diligent about those, because I actually do see the difference that they make in life And, you know, if I go in the past, like if I went through a period of being like, does this even do anything? And then I stopped doing my rituals for a couple of days. I'm like, oh yeah, it does something. Like really it does. Because I feel it, right? And so then I'm back on track.
How long did that take you to notice? Because like I don't think I really noticed doing rituals for like almost a year after I got initiated. I would do them and then I would not do them. And then I did Kabbalah like 8 months later. And I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, I guess these rituals actually do something. But that took me 8 months to even realize that they maybe did something. And then it took me like another 4 months beyond that. So probably almost 12 months to really get consistent and do them twice a day. So what was that journey for you? Like how long did it take you?
It was pretty quick, I think, actually. Especially weirdly, the trestle board one that we do, like if I didn't do that, I didn't sleep properly at night. I'm like, come on, really? How can that be the case? But totally it was. So
interesting.
You know, if I didn't do that, there were nights obviously where I was like, I can't be bothered with this, and I wouldn't do it, and I wouldn't sleep so well. So I saw that all pretty quickly.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, I don't really know why that one in particular, but you know, it is what it is. And so, but I was always pretty consistent about my rituals, and then I think I kind of like fell off the wagon maybe like a year and a half after getting initiated, and I went for like 3 days without doing them. It was just like, oh, this is what life used to feel like. This is garbage. I'm over it, and just went back to doing them. So,
interesting. And then you've been consistent ever since then.
Pretty much. I have to be like super. I like consider it like brushing your teeth. It's an essential thing if you want to like stay good and stay healthy, I guess. I don't know, for want of a better word. Like if you want your teeth to be good, you brush them, right? If you want your life to be good, do your rituals. Right. And I notice it, like if I don't, you know, there are a few days here and there where they don't happen, and I really notice the difference. I said to Nick the other day, I'm like, after some like insane interaction, I'm like, how come this always happens on the days that I don't do my rituals? And then I was like, oh, actually why it happened today.
You answered your own question.
Rituals.
That's hilarious.
But yeah, no, I see that for sure.
So rituals are a big piece. You talked about meditation before too. I mean, I totally agree with the rituals thing. Like if I even wait until lunchtime to do my rituals, I'm just like, what happened to the day? You know, where did my morning go? Where did my morning go? Like I should have done them when I woke up, or even if I don't do them, I don't have to do them right when I wake up, although I try and do them soon after I wake up. But even just like within an hour of waking up, you know, maybe I'll go make some juice in the morning first, or, you know, that sort of thing. But if I go to try and interact with the world outside my house prior to doing my rituals, it just doesn't, I don't walk outside. You know, it's like your American Express card. Like you don't leave home without it. I don't leave home without my rituals. I don't try and put my shoes on without my rituals. Not that I can't put my shoes on. Of course, you know, maybe we all struggle with our shoes sometimes, but it's like my relationship with rituals is such that I usually do at least like 10 minutes in the morning. And as the ritual master, there's a bunch of other ones that I do beyond just like the normal ones that some viewers might practice if they've done the initiation classes with our school, and the evening, maybe 20 minutes. So, but you know, that 20-30 minutes of my day sets me up for everything else to be successful. And I know self-doubt's something that has healed for me in phases. A big piece for me was like the King Solomon healing modalities. That was pretty huge. When I did those back in 2011, there was always like a self-doubt voice in my head. And I remember it healing at some point toward the end of that healing series. It didn't talk in words. It talked in like a feeling of like, you can't do that. Whatever fill in the blank that was. The voice
like a feeling of like you're not enough, or you don't have the skills, or
just like you can't, like it won't work, and you can't, and you shouldn't. So don't even try, dude. Just forget about it. And somewhere maybe toward the 7th or 8th or 9th session of the King Solomon healing modalities, this is like summer, fall 2011. I was just like, wait, where did that voice go? Where? It's gone. That's cool. It went away. And same thing when I did something that we do in the school called King Solomon Mind Region, which is like the next level of healings after King Solomon healing modalities. I did Mind Region in 2011, 2012, right after that. And another huge level of self-doubt clear. And that was a lot from my childhood. That was a lot of the you're never going to be enough, that sort of thing, which is an interesting, very dangerous flavor of self-doubt, that you're not going to be enough.
Right. Like, and a very pervasive one. I think that is something that I think a lot of people share.
Yeah. And so that healed a lot. Or the kind of self-doubt, like it's not going to work out in your favor, so you have to be in control. You're going to have to make it work out in your favor. So just taking control, where in reality we don't have to be in control of that many things in our lives. So we need to control our own mind. Yes. We need to control our own will, our own body, so that we can do what we need to do, both on a mundane level, like, okay, today I'm going to work out, or today I'm going to drive to work, or today I'm going to brush my teeth. There's that kind of control. But then there's this, most people have like a very twisted relationship with control, in my experience, where we're told we need to control all sorts of things, all sorts of factors in our lives. And I think a lot of that also comes down to self-doubt. Not for everybody, but maybe.
That's what I was going to ask. If you're linking like control and self-doubt, like if you're doubting everything about your way and your being, like at least if you control certain elements of life, you control them, right? It's easier. That's what you're saying, maybe?
Yeah. Well, if we control elements of life, then we can. It's just a flavor. I think it's a flavor of self-doubt. Is the ongoing attempts to control things. So a lot of that healed through doing Mind Region. A lot of that healed for me doing Kabbalah as well. That was a big piece. Was doing Kabbalah helped me to really let go of needing to try and figure out all the details of how I was going to do everything. I knew I wanted to do something. I would take that request to the Tree of Life in Kabbalah, and then by the end of the year, Kabbalah would show me exactly what I needed to do, and then all I had to do was follow what I was shown internally, and then boom, like that thing would take place in my life. Self-doubt was huge for me on this path too, because the first probably like 7 years of doing the mystery school path, I was constantly questioning the mystery school too. Constantly like, I don't know about this. Like I felt and knew it was right for me, but I was always just like sort of poking at it, like trying to figure out what the deeper mysteries were and what was really going on and what the deal was with the school. And like, I think questions that lots of intelligent people ask when they find the mystery school is like, okay, well, this is an organization that's like claiming to work with Earth's spiritual hierarchy of light, but they charge money for their classes. And okay, I get that they're a spiritual organization, but they're human, so they probably have to charge money because they have to rent offices and like they have to live somewhere and all that stuff. But it's just, I think there's a very inherent skepticism in most people who look at the school and they're like, okay, why is it set up like that?
Definitely guilty there of also asking those questions, you know?
Right. And it's a really good question. Like it's funny that we don't ask that necessarily about other things in life. Like, you know, you walk into like your favorite retail store, like you like to shop at Anthropology, or you like to shop at, you know, Saks Fifth Avenue, or you like to shop at your local boutique or whatever it is. And I don't think we walk into a high-end expensive store and like wonder about the CEO and wonder about like their tax structure and like wonder about like the opinions and attitudes and personal religious convictions of the people who laid the store out when they designed it. And we don't like, and we're spending tons of money there, you know, and we're taking these items into our lives and we're wearing them on our body or we're putting them in our home, and they're defining like our experience of this physical world and this physical body that we live in a very profound way. They become part of our sense of identity in terms of those stores that I named. And yet we don't really ask that many deep questions about them. So it's interesting that like the mind naturally with something like the mystery school tends to be kind of this like negative Nelly of questions for a long period of time. The mystery school might say lots of specific things about that. Like, well, that's because when we're bringing in the light, it also stimulates the shadows of the subconscious mind. You put the light into someone's subconscious mind through a life activation, like you're sending light directly into the blueprint of their subconscious. You're sending it into their tree of life, which are two ways of saying the exact same thing. You're sending it into their spiritual DNA. That's another way of saying the exact same thing. And then that light comes in and it kicks out shadows, and those shadows react. It's like we're poking that hornet's nest of the ego, and the ego starts reacting, and it's like, well, I have something to say about that. Anytime we start really bringing in the light, we're going to hit up against that self-doubt that's like, excuse me, I want to share my opinion about what I think about that. And the ego then has its say, and we're like, oh yeah, that sounds really good. It's very convincing, ego. Yeah, let me think about that for a while. And then we have to, those are like tests. So self-doubt can kind of become like our friend in terms of testing us.
Yeah.
When it shows up, eventually we can harness it and say, okay, you're here. So if you're here, there must be some test going on. What's the test?
I feel like it keeps us small and like safe, right? Because then if we're doubting something, we're not as inclined to like step out and go and explore it. We're not as inclined to like go into something that's not, it's not part of the masses and the general structure. And we're like, oh no, doubt.
Mm-hmm. Right. What can we do to get that voice out of our way? I mean, everyone's different. Like everyone has something they need to learn from that voice.
Yeah.
Everyone has something that voice is trying to teach them, but is it trying to teach you should just stay in your box? That's a decision.
I think a lot of self-doubt would want us to stay in our box, right? Because it's comfy and cozy, but then what? Like life doesn't change. You don't fulfill your dreams. You end up living maybe a monotonous life. I don't know. I mean, I feel like self-doubt, like for me, self-doubt about the mystery school, it's almost like a safeguard, right? Keeping me safe because if there's naysayers out there, there's always just that little part of my brain that's like, oh yeah, okay, I get that, rather than just being full bore in. But like, that doesn't serve me, right? Keeping me safe like that doesn't serve me. It just prevents me from like progressing and discovering things for myself. It's just, I'm still listening to what other people say. Mm-hmm. And I found over, this was like a big goal of mine for the last Kabbalah, is to like clear out that doubt, clear out whatever it is that's sort of like preventing that blockage and moving forward. And like, that's probably ongoing work forever, right? But I feel like I made huge changes and progress on that. So I'm stoked.
Very cool. I mean, yeah, listening to what other people say is, it's so many things. It can be really frustrating when we find ourselves doing that, especially if we worked on it a lot. Like, oh, look at what I'm doing. I'm still listening to someone else's opinions about me or about my life or about my marriage or about my business or about whatever. So whatever someone wants to say or think, it's like, does that person know and understand us? And should we listen to them? Like, does this person have, or does this system have something that's worth listening to for me? That kind of discernment's not easy for most people.
It's tough. Yeah. But I think I've learned this system does have something of value for me. Mm-hmm. But the other thing I've learned is that you can't stand on the sidelines and comment on the work that we do because you can't possibly understand it. It's something that you have to feel. Like I say to people sometimes, the work that we do is a bit like being in love. Now, someone could tell you all about being in love, right? You could chat for days and weeks on end about being in love. You would never really understand it until you feel it. And for me, I think it's the same with this work. You just have to feel it. And until someone feels it, someone who's never been in love will stand there and tell you love is a pile of garbage because they've never felt it. They've never seen it, you know? And I think for me, that's what I kept coming back to is like, well, you have to experience it. And when you do, like for me personally, I'm like, okay, I've experienced that. So now I know it's real. But standing on the sideline, thanks. But standing on the sidelines, it's like you couldn't know that.
Right. That's a good analogy with being in love.
Shut out a lot of the noise about it and just be like, whatever. If people have opinions about it, cool. Let's move on.
It's not, unfortunately, it's not a universal analogy because a lot of people might think they're in love, but they're really just taught to be really attached to somebody.
Oh, right.
So it's interesting that you use that analogy. Like, do we actually know a lot of people who are in love? Or do we know a lot of people who are taught to be attached? I'm not trying to answer that for you. I'm just posing the question. I don't know who your friends are, and I don't know how many of them are actually with partners where they're really in love. Or how many of them are with partners where they're both living out a fantasy program together. You know,
I never thought of the analogy in that way. But yeah.
It's interesting. Well, we're basically at the end of our time here. Is there anything else that you want to share about self-doubt and the mystery school and your whole journey before we close?
I would just say that all of this has been freeing. You know, it is nice to kind of like be outside of that cage of constantly worrying and thinking about what other people might think about what I'm doing. And that's nice. That's like taking a deep breath and just like exhaling and relaxing. You're like, oh, okay. I can worry about myself now and worry about my own life and worry about what I want to be doing and not worry about what other people think about what I'm doing. I'm like, oh, I like that, you know?
That's awesome.
Yeah. Cool. So thank you for all your work, for all you do for us.
My pleasure. Absolutely. Thanks for coming on the show tonight. So
thank you.
I hope you have a great rest of your night to everyone who's watching this evening. And if you're watching this some other time, wherever and whenever you're watching, hope you enjoyed it. Be back next week with more awesome stuff. And yeah, love you guys. Have a wonderful night. Take care. If you like this, subscribe to it on YouTube or on Facebook. You can follow my business page, but YouTube is best. It's just a lot cleaner, easier to see all these episodes on there. So take care, everyone. Have a great night.
Good night.